Rolling. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening. My name is Terrell Jerricks, and you're watching Random Links News. And with us is Senate District 35 candidate Laura Richardson. The last time she was our representative, she was in Congress, or the 37th District, and did an able job at the time. But due to redistricting, excuse my flub, the boundaries changed and it created the 44th District, and she ended up running against Janice Hahn. Was at that time, she did not win. But now she's back 10 years later, and we're going to ask Ms. Richardson, where has she been for the past 10 years? Because she was doing some really good work before she left Congress, and I would imagine she's seen a lot of things during that time. So, Ms. Richardson, where have you been? We've been looking for you.
I've been right here in San Pedro, living in San Pedro. I bought my first home in San Pedro in 1994, and I recently sold it and got another place here in San Pedro. Mm-hmm. So I've been right here in the community, just like everybody else, driving around and supporting the businesses, and particular in the last 3 years when we had COVID, I was right here like many of us, trying to figure out what were the next steps. But in the last 10 years, what I've been doing, when I came home, as you mentioned, in redistricting, the district was cut in half.
Right.
And it was made what we call a minority-majority district, meaning minority, larger Hispanic population. And so it brought in Linwood and Southgate and many communities we had not had in the past. But I was not successful in that race, and it was an eye-opener, of course, as any race is. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I have won more than I've lost. But still, it was disappointing because I take public service really seriously and I work very hard, and I enjoy helping other people. So what I did when I came home, I started doing consulting, and I represented companies like the West Basin Water District, which many you cover often. I worked with Cordoba Corporation, which is an architecture firm, and they were looking to do business in the LA River as the Army Corps of Engineers was exploring different avenues of what they were going to do with the LA River. And then I worked with a company that owned many multi-family properties. Each one was at least 200 units apiece. And of the approximately 70 to 80 properties they owned, 10 of them were senior properties. And so they asked me to create a health and wellness program. So to help their seniors to be able to continue to live at home safely and enjoyably. So we launched that program and of 2 properties, and it was very successful, and then COVID hit. And like many people, I had to adjust. And my sister had recently retired, and I'm a HGTV television junkie, I must admit. And I really enjoy watching, all of the work that they do. I've loved it. And so my sister and I decided that we would look at doing housing and help to fix up some of these older homes and make sure that they're preserved, and that people would have homes to be able to go into. And so we've done that for the last 3 years. So I've been a successful small business owner working at doing that. And so I've learned what it's like to keep a team working and healthy and safe. And in the end, hopefully having some degree of profit that you can continue. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And my mom, I don't know whether I should say I live with my mom or my mom lives with me, but we live right here in San Pedro, and that's where I first learned about Random Links well over 20 years ago, I think, when I was first running. And I pick up Random Links in the Marie calendars when I get my mom's pot pie, or if you're in America's Tires, it's there. I mean, all over the community, we have Random Links, and you guys have been such a testament to inform the public about issues oftentimes that we don't get the full story and background on. So that's what I've been doing.
Right. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing here is that you were a city councilwoman in Long Beach.
Yes.
And after that, you were elected to the state assembly.
Right.
You was in the state assembly for like 9 months before Congresswoman Millender McDonald had passed away. You count her as one of your mentors.
Yes. You did your homework.
I was here. We were reporting on that.
Yes.
The thing that was shocking at the time is that the fact that you left office to run for Congress. At that time, what I recall was, what are we going to do with this majority black district? Who's going to run? And you took on that burden yourself. And I was just wondering, if you had a political protege, in the same kind of situation, and people are urging that person to run, what advice would you give him or her?
Well, if we could take a step back just briefly on what happened when I ran. The first elected official I worked for was Congresswoman Millender McDonald. And when I went to the state assembly, I was happy. I was on great committees. I was in leadership. The first person from the South Bay area to serve as Assistant Speaker Pro Tem. So things were falling perfectly in line. And I'll never forget that day, because even though we knew she was not well, I didn't know it was that serious. And I remember being in the shower and just crying and thinking, this wasn't how I planned it. I envisioned being in the assembly for 6 years, in the state senate for 8 years. And then at that point, she would have been, significantly older, and I would have explored it. So it really was a difficult decision. And frankly, what caused me to do it was there was a community meeting. And at that community meeting, different leaders spoke and said how important it was to maintain representation, not only in terms of the fact that she was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, but also someone from the community with similar values and would advocate to help in those areas, such as Watts and Willowbrook and Compton and so on. And so it was at that community meeting, there were several of us who spoke. Valerie, her daughter, spoke, and that was really difficult to be a part of, because I would never want to, do anything to not be helpful to the family. But it was viewed that since I had just run in the assembly, I had the strongest opportunity to win. So Isidore Hall, who was the state senator, I believe at the time, or in the assembly, he was a rising star himself, and he graciously acknowledged that I probably was in the best position and supported me. So it was really a time when people think we don't come together and have these hard conversations, that it actually happened. And finally, I think it happened due to the leadership of Merv Dimley, who passed.
Right.
And the people like Merv's used to do what the question you're asking me. What would I do? How would I prepare someone, or what would I say? It starts way back from before that. It starts with mentors developing you and helping you. And if anything I've learned from the 10 years of being home, and of all the things that I'd like to work on, one of them is continuing to develop others. And if I were ever to be in that situation, one of the things I learned is I would want to come forward sooner and share with the community, I have this situation. I don't want to, speak negative of myself, but if I was facing an issue that I would think maybe down the road I wouldn't be able to serve, I think it's really important to tell people, communicate, and prepare that bench so that they're ready to step in. So what would I say to someone? I would say, from lessons learned that I've had, it's really important to have a transition team, because I jumped so quickly, all in 1 year, city council, state assembly, and Congress. And it was difficult. And because you want to serve, you want to be helpful, but you have, different ways that you're working now on policy, all these other challenges, and yet you're still trying to maintain and help in the community. So I would say really important is to have a transition team, have people you trust, who you're going to listen to.
Right.
Because you can have people you like and you trust, but you don't listen to them. So it's important to have people that you listen to and you respect, and you have that good old-fashioned kitchen cabinet, is another way of saying the transition team, to help guide you along the way. Talk about people that you're hiring. What are the qualities that you need in your office? I would even go so far as to say, have maybe a mock team that would interview your top candidates, because they know you, they know your your work ethic, and can help better prepare that you get the right people. And then as you talk about issues, keep them engaged.
Right.
So I would say, getting back to that old kitchen cabinet and having people as a soundboard from the community who can remain engaged and help guide along the way to keep you on track.
Right. Now, one of the things I thought was problematic, not dealing with you, but the narrative at that time, when you was dealing with transitioning from state assembly to Congress, and you have a house in San Pedro, you have a house in Long Beach, and a house in Sacramento. And I think at the time, people forgot that there was a housing crisis that imploded starting in 2009 onward.
Right.
And you was having to deal with these personal issues in a very public way.
Okay.
And it's like all kinds of assumptions were being made about your motivations, assumptions were being made about what's going on in your own situation. How do you deal with that?
Well, that's the tough part of being in the public eye, is that, your life is public and all of it is public. Mm-hmm. And it was very difficult. As we said, I had no intentions of leaving the assembly. So had it been as I planned, I would have been living in Long Beach. And then the only reason why I got a home in Sacramento was because the state no longer provides a pension for if you're a state assembly member. A lot of people don't know that. They think you have this big fat cat pension and all of that. No, that went away many years ago. And so people recommended to many young people coming in that one way to protect yourself is to purchase a home, and the equity that you're developing in that home will serve as helping as if you had had a pension. So that was the only reason why I even got a place in the first place, never thinking that I was going to need to be leaving in 6 months. Mm-hmm. So here I was, just in the process of going through with a very public divorce. My ex-husband was very widely known, very widely respected and liked. And, those are other things too that we run into, as women and men. Sometimes when you go through a public divorce, people are picking sides and assuming who's right and wrong, and really only those two people know the truth. But anyway, going through a very public divorce, and like many people that I represent, people, go through divorces, lose a relative, a father in my case, change jobs unexpectedly. This is how we live. This is real people. And frankly, I think that's why I've always been so effective as a legislator, and why people continue to vote for me and believe that I can help them, is because I keep it real. Right. I'm not this fake little face out there. I'm someone just like them, hitting it just like them. In the 10 years, instead of consulting, I could have run for office since then and could have been elected. Very much probably would have been. But I didn't think I should just run for office. I think there's something to be said for hitting it like everyone else, having to hustle, get a job like everyone else, feed your family like everyone else. And so, yes, it was a combination of things that happened that really caused my personal and financial life to really have a crisis. It was the beginning of what was happening of a housing crisis. I was one of many people who experienced that. And the bank, to remain nameless, I had actually signed a modification, had been processed and approved, and yet then in the same time, the house, was foreclosed. And it was reported to me by a reporter, interestingly enough. But yes, we have challenges. We face tough times. And I've learned in my few years now here, going around the moon a few times, that, it's not how you get down, it's can you get up? And when you get up, can you progress? And I've used that experience, that home situation, then to take on that being what I do now, which is, I look at homes that people throw away, they think, aren't any good, have no value, and bring them back to life to make it that someone else who could step in for their first home or their second home and, and start anew.
Do you find yourself a bit chagrined that the issues related to the housing crisis that started back then is still with us?
Yeah.
And in some respects, in more shadier ways, in more difficult ways, and it's impacting renters and would-be homebuyers alike in a more worse way. If you get into the state senate, what do you envision? What kind of policy do you envision for Californians, who is going through it now, dealing with the affordability crisis?
Right. So being a person who now works on renovating, redesigning, and remodeling and making homes beautiful, one of the things I learned when I was in Congress is we were looking at doing an infrastructure bank. And the point of the infrastructure bank would be to take public funds with private companies, their funding, and then build infrastructure that we as a country alone would not be able to fund all of the infrastructure improvements we need to do. Well, my idea and what I'd like to work on is a housing bank. And what I mean by that is, like, let's take Gardena. I grew up in the city of Gardena. A 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house can sell anywhere between $800,000 and $900,000. Who can afford that? A first-time home buyer?
Right.
Not many. So what I'd like to propose to happen is, let's say a person can qualify for $450,000 or $500,000, then we would have a housing bank that would be able to pay the second, so the remaining portion of what's needed on that loan. Then that second would be paid within 10 years, either one, through the equity that would have accrued through that home. And in the state of California, we have had continued, even in the worst times, equity has raised in home ownership. So in that 10 years, the equity would pay that second off. Or if the person sold the house within that 10 years, they would have to pay the second in addition to whatever they need to do on the first as well. So I'd like to me, it's not just about building affordable housing, because affordable housing has become unaffordable, right? So we have to look at financing mechanisms, things like workforce housing, teacher housing, all of those things, making them affordable, which means we have to come up with financing options to be able to help people to get in. And so that's an example of something I'd like to do, create a housing bank that would serve as paying a second, which in the old days, parents used to do a second on their child's home or whatever. This would be an instance where the state, we would help in that manner.
Okay.
And get it paid back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over the past few years, the Port of Los Angeles has been engaging in neglected communities in the harbor area in order to provide, well, first off, it's building a skills center. And some of that money was, received by they received it from the state government, from California. The other half is coming from other sources, including its own pocket. And the idea is to, one, retrain workers, two, actually train workers who need access to, good union jobs. What do you see as if you're able to become, a state senator? What ways do you think you might be able to assist in that process in order to make accessible good union jobs for a wider part of our, communities, particularly those that are more disadvantaged? Right.
And where there's such a strong economic engine in our own backyard, and many people aren't being able to take advantage of it. The first thing is I would like to chair a select committee. So you have your standing committees, the traditional things that we do policy on, and then you can seek from leadership to create a select committee if it doesn't exist on a specific topic. I would like to be the chair of a select committee on the impacts of automation. And so just like the FCC evaluates telecommunications companies and other entities if they're going to merge to determine if that's going to create an imbalance in the workforce, I believe we are going to need to start looking at the same thing with automation. So I'm not of the mind that all automation is good.
Right.
Because just go right here in our neighborhood. And how many now, I went to go to the car wash, take my mom's car to the car wash, and 3 out of the 4 places I went to did not have a single working attendant. They had computers. that you walked up to and you push, I want best wash, here's my card, and you roll in.
Yeah.
Well, that was someone's job before, right? And so, but let me put on my business hat. My business hat is the wages have gone up, and many businesses are saying, hey, I can't afford to pay this.
Right.
So I think we need to meet in the middle. And frankly, I think that's my strength of running for the 35th Senate District, is because I come with a business background as well as a people background.
Right.
And what I think we need to do is, I would like to see us incentivize, meaning when we have unemployment, for example, insurance, I'd like to see the unemployment insurance go to help with companies who are willing to hire people to work. So instead of people, I don't know if you've ever gone through unemployment or anything like that, but a person is applying for all these jobs and it seems like it just goes in the trash can somewhere, in the Ethernet.
Right.
And very rarely does a person get an opportunity to get a job. So I'd like to see, if we're going to assist someone, for example, with unemployment insurance, why not have that help subsidize with a company that's able to hire someone, and that person can train and move up within that company and eventually really have a job. So I had an experience. I called the Pizza Hut down here in our neighborhood on Gaffey, and I wanted to find out about the specials, and I got connected with a customer service center that was not even in this country.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, to order a pizza? So again, things like customer service centers. In my opinion, if a company is going to operate and they're going to provide a product, they should have people here who can answer our questions.
Well, let's get to the point
and
now
help
where
us.
McDonald's is having robots, serve customers. And so we're already going the route of automation, even beyond the ports, beyond LAX. We're going to see it in your fast food restaurants. That right there, I find, yeah.
Well, and so that's why we have to work with, and by the way, one of my first jobs was McDonald's. I worked on Florence and Crenshaw, right? I went to St. Mary's.
I know that's right.
And that was the McDonald's I worked in. But again, there's two sides to the story. We also just passed that McDonald's and other entities such as them are going to have to pay $20 an hour, right?
Right.
So to pay $20 an hour, how much do you think our Big Mac is going to cost? Are people going to pay $20 to get a Big Mac, fries, and a drink? So there's an imbalance, and that's what I'm saying. It's not enough just to be, McDonald's, well, you have a robot that's doing this, and then on the same hand, we're saying, okay, but you're going to have to pay your workers $20 an hour. Well, they can't afford to pay their workers $20 an hour and provide a quality product at the price that people are able to afford. So that's why I'd like to work with companies like McDonald's, like Pizza Hut. We had pizza companies announce that they laid off, either they laid off or they were laying off all of their drivers, and were going to deliver their pizzas by Uber because they couldn't afford to pay the people to actually deliver the pizzas. So what I'd like to do is look at different funding mechanisms where we can subsidize and work with private companies to be able to hire people and pay them $20 an hour, so we don't have to have a robotic society where we don't have to be taken over by automation, but we can also still work with them in understanding that wages are at a level that in some industries they're getting to the point where they feel that it's difficult to be able to have all of the workers that we would like to see.
But part of the reality of it, though, is that generally living in California, the actual affordability of living beyond housing is getting higher. So I understand there needs to be some sort of middle ground, but part of the middle ground still is increasing in wages, I would think.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I believe we're going to need to work with companies to say, okay, if you're willing to hire veterans, or you're willing to hire students, or you're willing to hire people with disabilities, or you're willing to hire people in general, we're willing to do, again, I would just as soon as paying someone unemployment insurance, I would just assume, last time I was aware, I think it was like $450 a week or every 2 weeks or something like that. So I would just as soon have that $450. We're still paying that person, hopefully more than the $450.
Right.
But that $450 is helping to supplement so a company can pay a person a fair wage for the work that they want to do, and
Right.
that the company needs them to do.
When you was last in Congress, you worked on an issue dealing with Plains All Americans, Rancho LPG.
Yes.
And
Yes.
my recollection of that time period was that you was a real fighter, and I think a lot of people were sort of admired the work that you did at that point. What has happened since then, there have been a number of reports about, like even back then, the fear was, and the danger was, that if there was an attack on Rancho LPG, or if there is an accident, there was an explosion, it can have the effect of a nuclear bomb. And part of the rationale was that it's literally sited smack dab in the middle of a bunch of oil wells that's all around the harbor area. Well, now there are like actual reports that have came out since then, supporting that fact. Now, what I've also heard is that in 2022, there were sort of talks that Rancho LPG will be sold and be turned to something else. If you get elected, do you see yourself taking up that mantle again?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, two things. One, let me tell you a quick story, and then I'll answer the question. When I was on the Long Beach City Council, Starkist left here, right? And they were a huge employer, and generations worked at Starkist, and the canneries. And I asked them, I said, "Why are you leaving?" And you know what he said to me, the CEO? "No one asked me to stay." No one asked a major employment industry in our community. No one met with them and said, "Hey, what can we do to keep you to stay? Why are you leaving? And is there something we can do? If we can do film credits with, the film industry, why can't we work with the cannery industry," right?
Right.
So, a lot of things, again, I think my strength that I bring to the table is having served as a staffer on the local, state, and federal level, having worked as an elected official on the local, state, and federal level, I've had the benefit of being around and hearing ideas, seeing results. So what would I do? My thing is, okay, where's the oil and the pipeline going? It's going to the port, right? So why don't we have the tanks at the port? On port property, where, God forbid, if something happened, no, we don't want it to go in the ocean. I mean, I've been to the Deepwater Horizon. I saw that firsthand. I was chair of Emergency Communications Preparedness and Response. So I'm not suggesting we want, oil or a disaster in our oceans. But I will tell you that if something were to blow, it's far better that it blows there than it blows up Taper Avenue and kills, 500 kids, or blows up Target or Home Depot, or people who are driving, along Gaffey. I believe it could be better sited. If we need a place for the fuel to be to help fuel the port and the various vessels that they have there, why aren't we storing it there, is my question. Not in the heart of the community where, if a disaster were to occur, could have significant injury to life. And typically when you look at emergency communications, the first thing is life, the second thing is property. And right now we have it out of sync. So what would I do, and how would I take it up? The first thing I would do is I've continued to stay in contact with people like Janet Gunther, a lady that I have a tremendous respect for. She is so smart. Her and all of, the San Pedro Neighborhood Council there, that's been diligently working on this issue. And so I would pull together a task force, not just with the port, but of the community, and say, okay, we have these concerns. What are some of the options? One of the options is the port or someone could buy that storage facility. Heck, we don't have enough storage of water, right? Why can't we store water there instead of storing fuel or dangerous chemicals or anything else? And then I would like to see us move, since that pipeline and the infrastructure is already there, move it into the port complex where it can have a greater containment area. Because right here in the middle of the city, all you need is a plane to come tanking in, and it could take out not only the tanks, but everything else around it. Whereas with the port, you already have Homeland Security that's watching very carefully terrorist potential attacks through vessels and other, I don't want to get into some of the things that I have learned, but I'm just saying I think there's other ways to do it. So my hat's off to Janet and all the folks with the neighborhood council. And I think we need to take seriously the concerns that they've expressed. And I think we need to either, I don't know, my last conversations with the group is they prefer to eliminate, the oil pass-through going through and chemicals and so on. I do know that the port needs, obviously, fuel and different things. So that's why my suggestion would be is actually moving it to a more appropriate location, not within the siting of a school that you can see the school and you can almost throw a football from the school to the tanks. But I'm in the fight, and we need to focus and we need to get it done.
Now, one thing I noticed in all of your responses is that there is this balancing between environmental justice, labor, business, and doing that in a way that it's not just a science to it, there's an art to it as well. What is the key to actually making that happen in your mind? The entire time I've been with Random Links, there's always been this tension between environmental justice and labor, and making sure that both are not mutually exclusive, concerns. As a state senator, if you become a state senator, what kind of ways that you would, go after sort of balancing those interests?
So one of the things you learn in politics is there's no someone said this to me once, and it's very true. There's no permanent enemies and there's no permanent friends, unfortunately. And so what you learn the hard way is you got to work with people. And where you may agree with someone on one issue, you may not agree with them on another issue. But that doesn't mean you make them a permanent enemy because you don't agree with them on this issue.
Right.
If you don't make that person a permanent enemy, you can go to that person.
Right.
And you can say, we got to do something about this. We got to do something about these tanks. The community's not going away. The issue is not going away. So what are we going to do? Let's stop kicking the can and talk about what can we do. What can we do? If you notice, like what I said, I didn't say they weren't going to need the fuel and the resources. They do. The truth of the matter is they do. But do they need it at the expense and the safety of the community? No, I don't think so. So I think there's somewhere between Rancho and the port where we could agree.
Right.
So what I do that I think is so very important and is becoming more important as parties are becoming more divisive is we need people who will actually sit down and talk to someone and not attack them, not hate them forever, not, run them through the mud, but say, come on, isn't there something we can do here? And talk about what are those potential solutions and then come together. They always say the best sign of an agreement is not one person is always perfectly happy. Everyone has to give a little bit.
Right.
And so coming back to that of being committed. And the other thing I would say that may or may not be positive with your viewers, but I think really term limits has hurt us in that example. Because what happens is people are so busy rushing to get to the next spot that they're not willing to take the time on the big issue. By the time you get the person, they're off to another job.
Right.
And we need them to focus and to finish that job and to finish that very important issue. And I think we have so many elected officials that are legislating by the hot thing they can get press on and not necessarily the diligent work that used to back in the day could take people 3-5 years to maybe resolve something, but you resolve it. So that's what I think is needed is the stick-to-itiveness, the helping people to find a middle ground and helping everyone to win.
So to wrap this up and wind this
Yes.
up, what would you like voters to understand about you and your candidacy, and what you trying to get done if elected to the state senate?
Well, that's an excellent question. So, if I might, I'm going to look into the camera. What I'd like the voters to know is that I come from the Harbor area. I grew up in Gardena, right in the Harbor Gateway community, impacted by goods movement. I've always lived in this community my entire life. And I think it's important that we need someone like you, someone like me, who's in the trenches and who knows what it's about and who knows why we need to do what we need to do and is in it to achieve that. So what I'm asking the voters to do is, you've been kind and you've supported me before, and the reason why I got into the race, one of the reasons, we did a poll and the numbers showed that people remembered the hard work, the coffee clutches, the things, the meetings at the supermarket, the workshops that I did in churches. People know, we don't give you enough credit. Voters are very savvy. Voters are very smart. And so you've given me a chance, and I hope that you feel that I've delivered on that. And what I'm here to say is, the girls still got a little bit more to do, just like you do. So let's get it done. And I'm in it with you, and I'm committed to helping. And my commitment is that we will see progress. So March 5th, Laura Richardson for State Senate. And random links, you know what? Subscribe too. We have to do that. We can't just go and pick up the paper. We need to subscribe so we can keep good local print in publication, so they can continue to keep us posted. All right? He didn't tell me to say that, but it's true. Let's do it.
And so importantly, go to www.randomlinksnews.com, and we do have a subscribe link that you can go to in order to make that happen. But thank you for watching us, and look forward to our next interview.
But this was the best one. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Okay.
Awesome.
So let's talk more, keep in touch, and